I recently watched Stephen Bartlett's show interviewing Wes Huff on Christianity, and it is a very interesting one. If you didn't watch it yet, you should. Once again, Wes doing a great job bringing his expertise as we all watch with his videos and seeing his defending Christianity. He's bringing the goodness that we can extract from Christianity and how it changes your life, how it changes your perspective. And it is a very unique one. But I want to bring here a discussion on a topic that they brought right towards the end of the interview on the supernatural side of Christianity, specifically our relationship with the spiritual world. And if we should or if we can get in touch with or in contact with spirits that are in the spiritual world, that are not here anymore in this world, materially speaking. Also considering his perspective on Christianity, that is the heritage that he has from the doctrine that he is immersed in, as we see in a more Protestant view of Christianity.
So you believe in the supernatural?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that we can speak to the dead?
No.
You don't believe that?
No.
So when people...
Well, I should preface that. It depends what you mean by speaking to the dead. I think it's possible. We have examples of it in the Bible. Saul gets a medium to call up the spirit of Samuel.
So do you believe mediums are telling the truth when they say that they're contacting people in the afterlife?
I think that there's a possibility of engaging the supernatural world, which is dangerous. And I think there's a very fuzzy line between mediums who are con artists and people who are actually engaged in something that is dabbling in the supernatural.
I say this in part because I've heard people say that, you know, their partner's passed away and then they've seen signs. Their partner has left them signs. Do you believe in this kind of thing?
I don't think so. Not in those ways. I think when people are dead, they're dead. But I think there are aspects of the supernatural world and a world that's going on behind the scenes that's articulated within Scripture that have an impact on this world in a way that if people can be distracted and misled to think that they are contacting dead relatives, then that is otherwise going to prevent them from pursuing what they should be as image bearers of God.
So you think it's demonic in some capacity?
I think it can be. I don't think it's always. I think in emotionally vulnerable states, we are willing to adhere to all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sensitivity that I want to communicate around that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think people, especially in the periods of the deaths of loved ones, often want to look for validation in their passed away loved ones leaving something or communicating or...
And also that we all want to believe when we leave.
Just wanted to bring here a point. Wes is not doing a disservice to those that believe in our relationship with the spiritual world. I am one of them, because he is bringing here something that we even fight against, which is those that try to portray this relationship with the spiritual world, that is the con artists. And yes, I agree with him 100% on that point, but I disagree on the topic that it is only a matter of emotional and psychological, let's say, coping and relief to the person that is suffering, because it goes beyond that. It can very much be helpful in achieving the ultimate objective, that is to be with Christ and to be in God, as Christ says in his gospel, and to see yourself as an image bearer of God's image, as Wes brought. So I don't think that it hinders that objective and that pursuit as Wes brings, but I'm also agree with the point of being aware of con artists, of those that try to use a grieving moment, a moment that you're very emotional and very predisposed to believe in anything that can relieve you from the pain that you are feeling, and not have that, let's say, pinch of disbelief or asceticism in trying to ask yourself if that person that is bringing you a connection and it is portraying someone that you love and it is in the spiritual world, it is truly a medium, and that is truly using its mediumship skills and that we all have. And I'm going to talk more about that in a second. But yeah, just wanted to point that out, and let's continue here with the video.
Use people we love, that they are somewhere better, that they are in a good place. And this is one of the things that I struggled with earlier when we were talking about hell, which is if such a small percentage of people are making it to hell by whatever measure of acceptance one believes, then that would mean that, like, my grandmother, who wasn't necessarily a devout religious person or a Christian, or she hadn't repented, is currently in hell. And that's a hard thought to take, that she is in such an awful place now.
Yeah.
And this would obviously make people not want to experience that dissonance and therefore reject religion and say, well, no, if I accept the Bible, then I have to accept my grandmother is currently burning in hell.
Right.
And so I'm going to reject the Bible. It's much easier than accepting that my grandmother is suffering right now.
Right. I mean, ultimately, that's I wouldn't do it that way, therefore it's not true.
Sorry, what do you mean?
Well, I don't think that God should send my grandmother to hell.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm going to conclude that it's not true based on that type of... Now, at the end of the day, does God communicate with people in ways that go beyond my understanding? I've talked to enough Muslims in the Muslim world who've had dreams about Jesus to know that something goes on. Like, I don't understand sometimes what happens on the deathbed between an individual and their maker. So it's not my place to say that they are burning in hell or whatever,
Sure.
the descriptive language you want to use, because it's between them and God. At the exact same time, apart from the saving work of Christ, I'm going to hell. So, and I genuinely believe that, is that apart from the inbreaking of God into my life, in part and parcel by things like this, but also by like showing me and allowing me to investigate these things and wrestle through questions and putting people in places in my life that have formed me and shaped me and allowed me to look at the evidence and have conversations and be honest and transparent. And those are the things that have led me down a road to say, I'm convinced. I'm convinced that this is true experientially, that it is intellectually robust, and that it is experientially profound.
There is something very interesting in a Western perspective of Christianity, which Wes brings here, and that I think has a very strong weight on how people perceive Christianity. And one of the reasons would be that it is very spread out, this point and this work, also in a discussion against atheism that is very scientifically bound or grounded. And then you have this necessity to always bring evidence of your faith, of your belief in Christ, in Jesus, and everything that he brings in his gospel. And that's all welcome. That's all necessary for even us to also ground ourselves in understanding that Jesus was part and is part of history, of our history in this world, and he is much more real than we can imagine. But it's not everything. That's the point. We shouldn't put everything of Christianity on that. It is one part of Christianity that helps a lot, and it's a very important part, but it's not everything. There is this other aspect, which is the supernatural one, and it is much more necessary than the scientific evidence database that all the Western culture, more in the North, works for. Again, not saying that it's not important. It is important. I'm just saying that it's not everything. But now talking about the spiritual world, and you see that Wes Huff is very direct and very honest in saying that he does not believe on that, at least not in the sense that some people want to bring. And in all fairness to Wes, he's being very scholarly here, that is very academic here by bringing his argument, but at the same time being open to the incomprehensible, to the mystery, because he brings the visions that some of his Muslim friends discussed with him about dreams that they had with Jesus and on our relationship with the spiritual world, as Wes brought. It is not denied in the Holy Bible. It is very much in there. You cannot deny the relationship that we have with the transcendent, with the spiritual world, with the spirits. And it all started with Allan Kardec in France, right about the 19th century, when Allan Kardec brought Spiritism, and his argument was that this was the science of Christianity. That is, it was an open path to scientifically study the spiritual world in relationship to our world through a Christian lens, that is, through Christ, through his teachings in the gospel and the book of Revelation that we find in the Holy Bible. And as we were saying, this problem of having a relationship with the spiritual world is much more towards the north, because we have, spiritually and historically speaking here, the problem that the U.S. ended up having with the Fox sisters, which were two sisters that they were having spiritual phenomenon in their lives. They were showing their mediumship here in the U.S., and they were even in contact with Allan Kardec. But then it ended up being more towards a show business, which is the mainly problem in the U.S. But I also just wanted to point out that even though they were having, Wes and Stephen Bartlett were having a religious discussion on the topic of the supernatural, and Wes brought here his belief, science, on the other hand, is proving the opposite. In the U.S., you have scientists, scholars that are studying this relationship with the spiritual world, namely Dr. Jim Tucker, Dr. Raymond Moody, Dr. Kenneth Parkman, Dr. Eben Alexander III, also Dr. Andrew Newberg, all of them bringing near-death experiences. Dr. Newberg bringing how our brains act when we have this relationship with the transcendent, with God, with the supernatural. Also, Dr. Jim Tucker studying how children remember about their past lives, which is another topic and that I already discussed in a video that I'm going to be linking here for you to watch. Only those are only a few names that are studying this topic, that are scientifically working to understand more of our relationship with the spiritual world, with the transcendent, and how life is after death. In Brazil, you have other doctors like Dr. Alexander Moreira Almeida, Dr. Mariana de Abreu Costa, Dr. Humberto Schubert Coelho, who wrote a book on that, on the science of afterlife. It is even entitled Science of Life After Death, that was published by a very renowned publishing company, Springer, which brings a compilation of their discussion on the science of life after death. and it's very interesting. It brings, scientifically speaking, this relationship that we have with the spiritual world, being consciously or not. So that's something for us to think about as well. And I would say that that's a point for science in this topic, when we have this separation that doesn't exist. It's only us creating this idea of separation between religion and science, that they are enemies and they shouldn't congregate and they shouldn't have a harmony between them. But here we are seeing the opposite. We are seeing this harmony and science bringing forth and breaking with sometimes our limited comprehension of the reality of the world, that we are stuck here in the material world, and the spirits or the spiritual world is only bad things. It's only demons and evil spirits and horrifying scenes as we see in Hollywood, when in reality it's not. It's very much the opposite. We can have a good relationship with good spirits, and we can have this good influence in our lives as well. And that reality is not from today. The early Christians had that reality. And it is so much a reality because we see right in the first epistle of John Apostle, chapter 4, right, the first verses, when he brings to us, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God, and every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard was coming and now is in the world already." So we have to be, of course, a little bit doubtful and have a little bit of asceticism, just like Wes was having, so that we can see and perceive who are the good spirits and who are the bad or evil spirits. And for us to close this topic and to bring here more of the possibility and how we should be open to this spiritual relationship with our loved ones, with our spiritual friends, and seek to have this relationship with good spirits, to be consciously having a relationship with good spirits and not unconsciously being influenced, having intuitions that comes from evil spirits. And just here for us, so we can have that openness as we are discussing here for the reality of the spiritual world, I want to bring these words from Brother Paiva in his article, "The Reality of Life in Other Dimensions," when he's bringing to us, the spiritual humanity is still invisible to our material eyes, but it exists. The spiritual world is not an abstraction. So let's have that in our minds and perceive that our relationship with the spiritual world is much more real than we think, and we can benefit more if we try to have a conscious relationship with them through prayer, through good works, through reflecting on goodness and studying the Holy Bible, studying principles, universal principles, values that brings and put us into a path towards a better humanity and a future that is promised and prophesied by Christ in his book of Revelation. But yeah, that's my point here. Please leave your comments down below. Tell me what you think, and I wish you a very great day. May the peace of God be upon you today and always.